I'll tell you everything I remember. Sometimes it's like remembering a dream. Other times it's as if it's happening to me, right in that moment. I don't know what this is. That look in your eye tells me you've got an inkling. Let me think back as far as I can. I'm opening up this dead file, ain't I? All that stuff about being ill on New Year's Eve, that checks out. I remember that. No, that's one of my old memories. Sorry for the confusion. It's just I'm looking at you right now, and this memory is of meeting you in the zone. I came outside in the small hours of the night because I heard your chopper, watched you touch down out back, and I felt mad you crushed my plants. Sorry, man. Once the engine got quiet, you came and gave me your orders. I went out and ran security alongside your men, but with all the cold, nothing really happened. You came and met me out front. I wanted to go back inside, but you refused to go into the building. Or your guards refused to let you, that was it. Dark corners versus blind snow, bright as a twilight will get you. It was a briefing in the snow, and I was hardly listening, since the cold was so debilitating. It's like he said, the feeling like you're paralyzed is something I doubt most people will ever know. Thought he kept saying he was cold, but I really don't remember that. Maybe some feelings don't catch on to the memories so well. I worked it out well enough. The containment zone was finished. I was happy until I realized what that meant. I thought you were talking about getting me out of the zone to bring me to the new site at Arkansas. It sounded like most of the scientists I knew from Lexington were going, so it was natural that you would need me there too. I was running through all the ways life might get better if we started the Vector program again. I was right about all that, only I was so busy running that through my frozen brain that I struggled to catch up with what you were actually saying. I needed to stay behind, alone. Because the thing EastCom needed was one big load of vectoring to clear the way for the convoys heading south. All the knowledge we've gained so far was being put at risk. I understood the stakes, and it was all for the sake of some new super vector program in a specially designed containment zone. The survivor communities there simply needed some government money and power to make themselves into something special. To get the space, the time, the manpower, and the gusto to bring all we've learned together and make something new. I don't think that's what you actually said, but that's what I told myself you meant. The short version was that there was hope. That's what I focused on. Actually, there was one other thing. I was thinking that maybe those survivor communities would be better off if I killed you there and then. I didn't feel cold the moment I realized I could get a blade into you before the guards could do anything. I could feel it now. The sense that everyone who was responsible for the outbreak was passing through my fingers without justice being done. Didn't you know, Maxwell hated you. He knew everything, and he resented himself for covering for you. He knew more than he ever said, and that's saying something considering all the stuff he blabbed. Sorry, I feel it too. It's come through. I have it under control. Don't kill me. I'll keep talking, okay? You went back to the chopper, and I stood there watching the road. I didn't notice you'd take off in the end because I was compromised by all the thoughts. To me it feels like anger, despair, or something like it. It meant more to the original Maxwell. It's like I said, he'd resented himself for the fact that he was even considering following your orders. He wanted to believe in everything. Did he really, though? I can tell you that I really do believe in you, Madam Director. Which I suppose now means that Maxwell did as well. This mixing is very confusing. I shan't get used to it anytime soon, but I believe in you. I'll make it work for you, and all of us. Yeah, I don't know who's talking right now either. Let me stick to the business that I can be sure is coming from the Vector's memories. After you left, that blizzard came in. That gave me time to think. I struggled around the house, cooking what I had, and always coming back to look at the crate of bullets and bombs you left me. I wanted to think of a way to use it my way, to do something you wouldn't expect. But the cold was so horrid, I really only thought about how to get more stuff over to the fireplace with what energy I had during the day. That's about all there was for the first, second, and third. Then, no, it was on the evening of the third. That's when I thought you... Okay, this makes no sense, but I thought you'd come back for me. Because think about it, from my perspective, If we needed a big vector effect to clear some space, there were already so many plankton-enhanced zombies in Louisville that firebombing the city into oblivion would do the trick. No idea if that's really true. It is, but yeah, I understand. Well, I didn't know that then, so I was really thinking, or hoping, that you would come back and pick me up, since you all owed me so much for what I'd done. Especially since I wasn't actually getting any work done in that weather. That's why, when I heard knocking on the front gates, I didn't think for a second it was a zombie. They hadn't tried to get in for weeks. Maybe that was just it though. There came a point when their instinct to go get the vector overcame the cold once they got hungry or miserable enough. Miserable? Oh, well, Maxwell thinks the zombies have emotions and memories, and in fact I would say he knows it because of what he's been through. Anyway, I went out. I pushed on those big gates, driving a huge drift of snow into the air with my monstrous strength. I went out and let it coat me, desperate to see my rescuers. There were zombies behind me before I knew it. I had my arms pushing away a couple to the front. Teeth were trying to get through my coat, but I'd already covered it in leather pads to make it really thick. Still, it seems those zombies had managed to overcome the cold. Adapt. Maybe that. Some must be better with it than others, and even if only a handful among the millions are immune, that's enough to kill a vector. I think I know what happens to make them like that. It's the same thing that was about to happen to me. Death and rebirth in the snow. Like the previous reports said, there is something so horrible about all of this that I don't really want to think about it. In fact, I can't. They took me with them, and stared at me, and well, I want to say they were... Well, no, it's like I remember staring back and seeing their mouths flapping at me. I thought it was all something significant. But I'd lost most of my blood. These memories are worthless, ignore me. It was time for another regeneration cycle, only once the zombies stopped dragging me around, they had practically taken me out of the city. I was in a farmhouse near the fences, across the fields on the other side of the main highway. About as far as a zombie can get without being pushed back into the city by the weight of numbers always flowing in. A good spot to lie low, that's for sure, but the house was still frozen over. I could feel it as I was coming back, numbing all the regular pain, yet given the choice I would have gone with the pain without hesitation. There was a day of hell, perhaps longer. All I know is that after this devilish time was done, the cold was gone. Not the ice, only the cold. It didn't feel so bad, but I wasn't slowed by it when I began to twitch and roll on the ground. After reconnecting enough muscles to stand, I was something new. I could walk, I could run, and just as well because I was far from safety, far from food, and the blizzard was still deepening the snow every minute. The wind scoured off any heat in the world, making conditions arctic and then some. I stayed inside until my fingers were listening to me. Then I threw on a couple of layers of clothes. It was everything the depressing old farmhouse had. An 80s shell suit completed my look, way too flimsy for what I was about to walk into. I was already hungry, and that hunger overcame the fear of the cold pretty soon. Once I was outside, it wasn't so bad. My adaptation was palpable. What would have paralyzed me a few days earlier was now only mildly debilitating. Such is the tale of human success in these trying times. I was stumbling, but I wasn't stuck, and that got me across the farmyard and into a barn. The thing was full of zombies, who peered around at me meekly. Having been trapped in there without a meal for so long, for me to suddenly check in was too good to be true. Sorry, they didn't think any of that really. Just more of his speculations. I killed them all and moved on. I walked north, trying to reach the highway. It was a bright night, since the snow was glowing under the moonlight. Any zombies that saw me probably couldn't get their legs moving to come take a bite. It was peaceful. The snow was so thick that I actually walked right past the highway. It was buried all the way beyond the traffic barriers in the middle, and so it looked like more field at first. It was only when I ran into a fence in the suburbs beyond that I realized I must have walked too far, and sure enough, when I looked back I noticed the tall streetlights over the highway behind me. They'd blended into the bare trees before, and my eyes were mainly on the ground during my trudging anyway. What a lark. With the highway somewhere underfoot, walking back to the HQ was easy. The snow bridged over all the cars that once littered the road, and only the toughest zombies were out and about, offering negligible resistance. As I walked, I thought that I probably did have the strength after all to carry out one more big fire as you asked. I didn't know whether the cold would make the zombies hesitant to come out and play, or desperate enough to approach the warmth of their burning comrades. Would that be enough to get a decent zombie pilgrimage going and save the human pilgrims from being in my position? Given my doubts, I thought it might be better to stick things out and essentially force you guys to stay in Lexington. What I saw when I got back to HQ changed my mind fast. It's so wild that it feels like a problem with my memory, but it has to be true because Maxwell, totally changed how he saw the situation afterwards. And look at me. I didn't have this face last week. Yeah, you've heard people saying they're younger than they look. They all better answer to me now. So essentially what happened was something like me now was there outside of the HQ. It was in among a group of 20 or so that was still milling about by the doors. The smell of plankton from my demise still wafted from the red snow on the ground. Yep, I could smell it now. It smells like lunch. Seriously, I don't have a better way of putting it. We'll get back to that. The point is, I was stopped in my tracks by the sight of something that was pretty obviously supposed to be me, and equally obviously wasn't. A zombie with my beard and hair, my face, my build even. Forget the cold, this turned me still as a statue. Even being what I am, I'm not going to claim to have any answers. But I can tell you what I thought then, and I'm inclined to agree now. Things are getting crazier by the day. If this could happen, what else was going to happen? I let go of any idea that I could be in control, or that anything I could do had a chance to save us. That left only your orders. It seems things were going to get worse whatever I did. The sight of what was essentially myself in zombie form provided an ultimatum: follow orders, or give up the last dreg of hope that civilization was going to pull through. And either way, probably end up deader than dead, which may or may not actually be a kind of life after all. All bets were off, and all plans were moot. That's what I thought anyway. I was being dramatic, eh? That's what got me serious about all this. One last job for you guys, and if I lived, then I would fizzle out in peace and quiet. Everyone wins. I know it wasn't really me, but I still feel proud of it. Is that wrong? Well, let me take the good with the bad. I had already stashed weapons all around the HQ, by which usually I mean they were lazily left on the floor here and there, so I took up a baseball bat and simply dispatched the crowd at the gates like they were any other customers. Swinging the thing made me feel like electricity was running through my veins, superheating my body in an instant. The one that looked like me, I hit it so much that it certainly wouldn't come back. It felt like a fundamental mercy. Treat others as you wish to be treated doesn't quite cut it when the other person is an attempted regeneration of you. If that's what it was, here's my motto then. Good riddance, and please don't kill me next. Not that I think you will, obviously. Anyway, I went inside to rest and to plan. It was practically freezing inside the house, which didn't really matter anymore. I felt almost good, thinking about my purpose, thinking about bringing something or other to an end. It was a fantasy, it was reality. No less one than the other. Sorry, I've inherited a less than useful view on the world here. It had been around dawn when I killed those zombies, and a quick nap got me to midday. It was time for my action hero moment. Every last Molotov cocktail from the garage went into my backpack. Don't need safety when blowing myself up might actually be all the world needed, you know. I pulled open the clasps and let the straps out to their largest extent so that I could fit the whole thing over the back of the drum magazine from that jacked up M16. Of course I'd be taking that out. It's a real attention grabber. The boring part was moving all the cartridges into the magazine, unpacking them from boxes and pushing them through the feeder one by one. 100, 200, 1000, 2000. Still had leftovers in the boxes, though I had no intention of returning. No, dying for real was my endgame. Was that wishful thinking? I don't even know anymore. I did take one measure for my longevity though, repeating the process of stitching torn up leather patches all over my coat. I spent all afternoon thickening my hide in this fashion. Once I was a few sharpened teeth away from being a crocodile, I went back down to wade through the junk in the garage. I took down a machete from the wall and slid it through my belt. I tried on all the gear at once to test the weight. What weight? The mere thought of the action had me pulsing with unnatural strength. I was ready to go right there and then, but it was already getting dark. I had no idea if you guys were watching me, or would have wanted me to commence the work immediately. Well, I decided to get some sleep first. I woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of zombies. I wasn't the only one getting stronger. They had broken down the fences at the front of the HQ, and were looking for me downstairs. There couldn't have been a better hint that my time in that house was over. I took that machete and diced them up, surprised at both how easy it was and how compelled I was to keep hacking at them even once they were still. I threw the pieces out and got to work on breakfast. I pretty much poured all the canned goods from the cupboards into a stew pot and cooked it, creating a horrid yet nutritious slop. I swallowed as much as I could, then stuffed the side pockets of my bomb bag with chocolate, energy bars, and orange soda. At least I felt the weight from it now. The thing's straps were practically breaking, but it only needed to hold on until the bombs started flying. At 5, it was time. Time for what? Time to go out in a blaze of glory, I was thinking. There would be blazes and glories, at least. I wanted the whole city to wake up and smell the aeroplankton, then burn up trying to get it, becoming a beacon large enough that all Kentucky might be peaceful enough for whatever you guys needed. I'd practically forgotten what that was, because my thoughts were always on strange images of places that, well, if I try to remember them, it's like dreams or fantasies, but in the moment I'm sure I was remembering them as real memories, something like I'm doing right now. Yeah, I doubt everything I'm reporting is really what the Vector was thinking. Only what's left from the rebuilding of memories, neurons, or whatever. You asked for details, and I've got 'em, but remember, it's probably all fake. I've been trying not to think about that this week. Anyway, I simply walked from HQ towards the city centre, hoping to leave as much scent trail as possible or something. I fired the M16 into the air now and again to make sure any zombies in the nearby streets would know to fall in and join my march. By 6, I was at that park I'd burned out before. The snow completely obscured all evidence of the blaze, so I thought I would have to make another one. Here's where things got started for real. It was all slower than before, since I had to wait an age for the hordes to come out and investigate the racket I was making. Once I had a sizable crowd sub-shambling towards me, I got the first fire going by dousing the front ranks in burning gasoline, then turned to make my way northeast, deeper into the city. The first place I wanted to check out was the university campus. There wasn't much left to burn, of course, but I figured that its vector effect from before would mean the area was rich with zombies. I was more right than I'd hoped. The place was absolutely infested, with every turn of the head revealing 1,000 more rising from the snow or billowing from the windows of half-crumbled buildings. This was more like it. I lit some more living wicks and carried the procession eastwards, stopping to use the M16 on any that looked like they'd adapted to the cold as well as me, to minimize the risk of anyone catching up. I was in a zone, for sure. I think I'd given up on living, and was so pleased with how my new burn was going already that the fear of death and failure was consigned to the flames with the rest. I drew out even more followers by winding through the old suburbs towards the centre. Once the horde was sufficiently everywhere and all-encompassing, I finally stopped recruiting and tried to find a way to give the flames time to spread. My solution was a high school. Sturdy walls, long hallways, and doors big enough to let a steady supply come in, while keeping the majority of the fuel clumped together in a burning crush outside. It was the same success story from the university. Or if you look at it another way, I was roaming the hallways of a school shooting people. Thank the Lord, the disease already killed all the kids, so there was nothing heinous about this rampage. It was in that school, didn't catch the name in the dark, that I spent most of my first day of work. Burning zombies stumbled in and were kicked to the floor by the deafening blasts from my M16. The fires began to take the building, yet fear of fire was long gone for me. I was happy to go right up to the cusp of the blaze and floor anyone looking like they might break out. A glance from a window now and then confirmed. Well, it confirmed nothing, I guess, since all I could see was smoke. Smoke that could only be from burning plankton-fed monster meat. Trust me, you can tell by the smell. The entire city was taking a big breath, inhaling zombies from all around, flinging them towards my smokehouse. I was driven upstairs by the heat, and the zombies followed. For hours I battled in the hallways, ducking into classrooms to catch my breath when I could and to hide for a few minutes while the zombies floundered in the ashy dark. It was actually hell, but I wasn't down at all about it. This was exactly what I wanted. I thought I was doing a fantastic job. I guess I really was, since here we are now. Hardly noticing the time passing, evening soon arrived. I was able to sneak out of the main school building and attend to the fences. The school was ringed by hefty metal fences, which were keeping the vast majority of the horde at bay, and it was only when I realized this that I, in retrospect, put together how impossible it would be to hold out in a single building against their full numbers. I had gotten lucky. So now I had streets of zombies staring right at me, like a crowd of protesters or something. And what's a good protest without a fire? I bombed the fence lines with half my supply, so that the blaze would spread backwards through the clogged city. If it wasn't so cold, I have no doubt the lot of them would push the fence right over. The smoke, snow, and probably aeroplankton now drifting around town in all directions had broken their focus on me. Again, I would be long dead without this saving grace. Or something like dead, of course. You know what I mean. The huge blaze caught the attention of most of the zombies already inside the school grounds, causing many to go back outside or obsess over the fences. That left the coast somewhat clear for me to slip back inside and settle down in a classroom as darkness fell. The fire would do my work now. I was merely the night watchman. I barricaded myself in the classroom furthest from the main entrance. I took off my gear and saw that huge gashes had been gouged into my shoulders by the weight of it. Didn't feel a thing, and they were practically healing before my eyes. If I'd been sane, that would have been the last straw. Instead, I could almost literally shrug off the torture and tuck in on some chocolate and a bag of sunflower seeds I'd swiped from a locker. As I crunched this cud, I could hear the fire. It sounded like a low rumble, with loud bursts of percussion when it did some serious damage to a nearby building. Sometimes there would be a popping sound. It was the zombies' heads exploding by some horrid build-up of pressure. Maybe the plankton or bacteria or whatever were all hiding in the brain during the emergency, and one too many got in, fracturing the skull. Just an idea? It's a fun and satisfying game to sit in the dark and listen to your enemies being destroyed. And the world being saved, perhaps. If it wasn't for the smell, it would be the perfect night. Even though there was a risk the school might burn down even more than it already had and crush me or something, I actually managed to get some sleep in my little corner. In fact, I slept all morning. I think no longer feeling pain or fear was part of a package that included not knowing how tired I really was. Less of a superpower than it might seem. I moved through the charred remains of the school and witnessed the snow-capped mountains of ash in every direction. The horde was gone. A few living specimens were crawling around, who got a machete in the neck if our paths crossed. The whole place was completely obscured by smog from the burn. Visibility was 10, maybe 20 yards. A quick look around the nearby streets revealed how many zombies were actually still there. They were all quite docile, content to wallow in the smog, I think. I began to shoot them, which didn't get much attention. Then I spotted a little public park, surrounded by the same kind of fence the school had. I spent some time convincing a few locals to join me in there, and used their bodies to start my fire. It actually took a couple of hours to really draw interest, since the local smog had them enraptured or lost. I was able to get what I wanted, though, the same thing as yesterday, where everyone crowded up by the fences looking in at the smouldering bodies, ignoring the fact I was strolling around starting fires at their feet. I have no idea if this was even worth it anymore, since the smog was probably keeping the zombies here, or making them go get high in the ruins of the school or something. I kept on vectoring anyway. I had a saying, try before you die, in that I might as well try to make the world a little better. Nice, huh? It was a much easier day than the one before, until nightfall. I could feel the cold starting to creep down through my natural defences. The smog was getting worse and worse. Visibility was down to 5 yards. As the zombies came into the park, I was firing the M16 at where I thought the entrance was, listening for the sounds of burning flesh and the orange glow in the mist. Still, a few always escaped my notice, and hence zombies would sometimes pull at my backpack or lunge at my legs from the sides. With the return of the cold came the return of fear. The M16 was working wonders until it didn't. It must have got too hot or too full of ash. The thing started jamming up over and over. and I didn't know what to do other than rack the chamber and keep shooting until it happened again 10 seconds later. There's another thing about the zombies that I didn't mention, on the dead files that is. They like the dark, a lot. They really liven up at night, and I'm almost certain the way conditions affect the bacteria, or the plankton, is worth checking out. They seemed faster, even if it was colder. Or maybe I was getting slower. I decided that I needed to escape and find somewhere to lay low for the night, but even with the smog covering everything, the horde I'd managed to stir up stuck right with me. I leapt fences and barged into buildings, hoping to find a secret corner. Nope, every closed door was only keeping zombies in, not me out, so the more I looked, the more pursuers I was recruiting. In my panic, I neglected my bombs. I actually still had a couple left. I didn't know where I was going, running scared and almost blind through the streets. There were pockets of safety here and there, which would fill with enemies within a minute. Over and over, hands closed around my arms, shoulders, or bags. I would tear myself away with all my might, deathly close to stumbling on my face and letting the mass flood over me. It was goddamn crazy. I know I asked for it, but I felt like I deserved a little better as the zombies cornered me. I had rounded a corner into a dead end and turned back too late to stop the horde plugging the gap. I had my back against the wall. I kept them off for a few seconds with my M16, then it jammed or ran dry. Didn't have time to see as the mouths descended upon me. In the moment, it was something that had happened to me before, but I think it's mixing with my old, original memories, where this was an entirely fresh horror. The weird thing is I don't remember it hurting. That's a professional vector for you. So they had me, but of course this isn't the end of it. I woke up a few days later, only a couple of blocks away. I must have been kept in the smoke for a while as a zombie. Who knows? The outer layers of my clothes were gone, as was the gun, and all my other little weapons, but my big rucksack was still right there, with a family-sized bar of chocolate and 2 firebombs untouched. I was in the middle of some yard somewhere. It was near the waterfront, I think. A plaza surrounded by businesses, though it was all snowed in. There wasn't much to see in the dark, it was night, apart from a few shadows. I had been lying down at first, and those things ignored me. When I stood, I left an almost me-shaped hole in the snow. I was probably missing a limb when I dropped into the ground there or something. I don't want to know. I drew in a long breath, then carefully let it out slowly. I thought I might stay under the radar. Not at all. As soon as whatever lives in my lungs got out into the air, the shadows nearby converged on me. I started running, then stopped again after like a minute. I wasn't ready for another life. Should have stayed lying on the ground. That's what I'd done in previous reincarnations. Doesn't matter. The point was, I was about to die again, so I thought I would go out vectoring. 2 firebombs was more than enough to get something started. I threw the bag on the ground, followed it down, whipped both bottles from the bottom of the thing, and then quickly threw the first without lighting it onto the 2 or 3 guys closest to me. For the other, I ripped the match out of the tape on the side and lit it up pretty much right as the first guy was on me. There was no room to throw it, but I basically smashed it against the side of the zombie's head as it was trying to bite me, and the eruption of flame actually pushed us apart. I felt it. The front of my shirt vanished under a good soaking of burning gasoline. I felt it real bad. Too late to go back now, though, and again I'd gone through it before, which I guess made it less bad, not in any way that mattered. The point is that a fire was started, and dozens of zombies were rushing towards the heat and light. There was a scrum between us all, as they all tried to bite at me, but I was pretty seriously on fire, making that hard. And the fire confused the many mouths into biting each other also. Flame-grilled plankton must have been all over us. It was like a big, warm hug. And it worked. More and more of them came, a fresh beacon that grew the crowd around me. The question was, why was I still looking at it? I believe, as you know, something had changed in my body when fire was first introduced, shall we say, and whatever it was, it made me more fireproof than the rest. So despite being locked shoulder to shoulder in a burning crush of flesh, my organs were oozing that stuff that makes it burn off outwards. This kept me some kind of alive, whereas the closest to me in the crush would melt away. I mean, it's not like I had some clear view or clear feeling of what was happening. This mass of zombies was jostling, and so I was being thrown about all the time, and my eyes didn't last very long. What I was hoping for was a wall of burned out corpses to entomb me in the middle while the blaze spread outwards. and having me there in the middle would make this vectoring exercise the most powerful one yet. A mix of aeroplankton from living and dead flesh cast into a burning hot wind right from the source. A recipe for success, no? I say this like I planned it all out. I didn't want this. Not much anyway. Sorry to be so confusing, it's just that I didn't really want to be killing myself like this, but at the same time I wasn't that interested in staying alive. I think I know why. I had time to think about things because my little tomb plan kind of worked. I stopped burning so much, but the fire all around me carried on. I was on the ground, I think, beneath a pile of leftovers that wouldn't burn, growing heavier and heavier, sometimes becoming lighter for a moment, when an enterprising zombie must have dug through to me, only to be obliterated by the heat before they could really do much with their prize. So yeah, time. And what did I think about? I thought about you, Madam Director. You made quite the impression on me. You see, I hadn't properly spoken to another person in a long time. This creates, over time, a certain sense of panic, a desire for the safety of the group, an animal instinct. When you descended from the sky to reach out to me, only to then deliver little more than orders for me to kill myself for the good of the herd, it changed me. Before, I had been compelled to be my own man, and then after, something snapped. I went through the drama of pretending I was still in control, as I mentioned earlier, but really, my will to live was gone the moment you said goodbye. Goodbye on behalf of our species. Does that make sense? The fact I'm here now muddies the weight of all this, I must admit, yet in that pile of death, I dwelt upon that snapping of my connection to you, to hope, to humanity, and I thought, ah yes, I'm right where I need to be, best hurry up and die. And I was thinking how there was never any hope for any dead, for anyone who didn't get to a survivor cell before the infection hit, because those who are immune are alone. It doesn't matter how many television survival guides you watch, or how many voiceovers live from the scene you digest. You won't make it. That's not what we are. People will say, I will survive the fall of civilization because in the past we survived in the wild and that was even harder. But people, the animals we once were, didn't survive on their own. They operated in groups, 100 or more, and they just barely managed to keep it going, wavering on the precipice of extinction time and again. That's how you survive. I know this because I know where this bacteria, the bacteria that the scientists managed to revive, originally came from. The past. Back in the wild, it thrived on humans. It evolved with us and made us its hosts. It drove us to war. A war between those it could infect and those it could not reach. This was a war between the individuals and the groups, humans as animals and humans as a society. Those who once tried to live on their own or were outcast from their tribes were destroyed by the bacteria, while those with the power of civilization organized against those monsters and drove them to extinction, thus becoming a new kind of being, one evolved entirely to live within the group, and one that carries an eternal fear of the monsters that once hunted us. You can all feel it. Deep inside you, you have an instinctual terror of the human figure with mouth agape, the creatures of the night which cease to speak and live only to hunt, to serve the dark spirit inside them. Only burial or fire prevents a human body from being vulnerable to this fate, and all those tribes who didn't do this to their dead were simply wiped out. Ultimately, the zombies of those times were defeated. Yet like the raven still looking about in panic for an ancient avian predator long since dead, we still know what it was that haunted us for thousands, tens of thousands of years in the wild. It drove us together and made us what we are. That's why, now that it's back, it might just be able to make us into something new. It is time again to evolve, to be forced to work together or die. Only now, those left alone are not merely victims or monsters. They are deads. They are to be pitied, or if not, to be sacrificed to placate the rage of those already fallen. It is only that in doing so, it appears that it is not the group that is evolving, but the dead. So which will it be? Will the survivors huddling together prevail, like in the outbreak of 1 million years ago? Or will the concentrated power of ever-strengthening disease turn humans back into individuals, immortal, ever hungry, learning to be something new? Yes, to embody the spirit of human civilization in a single being, to realize and harvest in totality the conceptual brilliance that saved our animal ancestors. I think there's a very real chance that everything you are doing is in vain, and that the true result of this cataclysm, its purpose, is that which speaks to you now. It is symbiosis. It is a new contestant in the survival of the fittest, one who is not merely a part of a community, but a host to a community of billions of like-minded passengers, who benefit not from the safety of the herd, but from the very fact that a herd never dies, ever replenishing its elements. I am more than any person can be. I contain every advantage you might hope to gain as individuals. I am a more successful animal. And here it is me held in the back of a sealed vehicle, a mobile cell. One gets the impression that this injustice will be... I'm sorry, it's his thoughts, my thoughts. They're so strong. I'm bloody losing it. Sorry. Yes, I understand. Focus. I was supposed to be telling you what happened. Sorry, right. Thinking back, ignoring... I think there isn't so much to say, really. I'm afraid my real memories are decreasingly complete now, because whatever was happening to me then, in that pyre, I think most of my sensory input had been disabled. I was as close to unconscious as you can get, without getting the mercy of not having to think about anything. I felt like... I don't know if you've ever felt this, but it feels like being kept awake for a very long time. A funny thing to say about being in the middle of a huge burning mass of flesh, I know, but that was really what I remember of it. After all this, I think the part you must want to hear about is the part I've got to leave blank. I'm mad about it too. I mean, what else do you think I've been asking other than who am I? Or what am I? If I've been informed truthfully, then you picked me up by helicopter when collecting samples. You noticed my appearance had mutated to be familiar, the same process I had experienced back at the HQ. I must have been a zombie. I try to avoid this conclusion, yet who else was there to receive all the parasites and such from the Vector? I remember seeing the burnt-out plaza where the Vector had been. All ash, no survivors or body parts to reanimate. He was gone. But clearly some part of him had spread around with our little friends, and it was dumb luck that you came looking for samples that evening, while whatever I had become was mutating helplessly on the wayside. Thank you. That's what I mean to say by all this. Thank you. And thank you to the Vector. You know, he always thought. In my memories, I have this strong belief that curing people was possible. And he thought that you thought it could never happen. So, here I am. Once we get to Arkansas, I'll help you in any way I can. That's all I can do. Look forward. Because I know that what I see in my past isn't really me. But if who I am now is defined by my memories, my past, then who's to say? I'm only torturing myself by getting into this at all. I think I've covered everything, so... Alright, thanks. I need a rest. Additional notes. The subject was recovered from the Knoxville containment area. The subject strongly believes that they are no longer Maxwell Bravo, having instead inherited his memories through a dubious process. I ain't convinced as much too. But we can be certain that the transfer of memories between brains is a real possibility. Not to mention this business about seeing his clone out there. I think all the pieces are in place for his story to be real, only I'm damn sure it ain't. More likely, I think the extreme situation this guy threw himself into managed to change him, in line with the current position of our research. That's the more promising part, without a doubt. Though if we can get this supposed ability to transfer one's body into another host, if that's what Mr. Bravo is alleging can be done, then the potential of rapid development through exposure to stressors is multiplied. We can make the symbiotic being of our dreams, then take that and turn others into it. The potential for new crops alone it can save the world and then some. We have to make it through these coming months at all costs, and seize everything we can. Whether the world knows it or they don't, the fate of our species depends entirely on our next project. The next generation of the Vector program will be either the last or the one that makes this whole mess the start of humanity's golden age. Well, ain't I getting ahead of myself? Don't even have permission to do it yet officially. Well, once I tell the boys about all this potential, who do you think they'll side with? There ain't no government but us, and that don't need be any different. I ordain that we keep Mr. Bravo, or whatever that is back there, alive until we can get our equipment set up in the new lab. We'll get the truth out of him, out of it. In the meantime, we'll keep an eye out for any zombies that look like him and kill them first, just in case he ain't really full of shit. Zombies with the mutated powers of vectors are just about the one thing that'll finish us off, I reckon. You know what? I'm gonna cut off the oxygen supply to Mr. Bravo's cell. A leader's gotta play things safe for everyone's sake, huh? Too bad about all that. Let him sleep. Maybe he'll wake up a whole new man again. Note to self, when he's got nothing left for us, set him on fire and see what happens. I ain't being cruel. This world's full of dark surprises for those willing to look for them. To bold new ideas and the guts to kill the world for a dream. Hallelujah.